and welcome to the Carroll Cox Show. I'd like to share with you this evening a subject regarding the treatment of Hawaiian lands. You know that saying, Hawaiian lands and Hawaiian hands? Well, we're going to be talking about that, and I want to share with you, over the past few years, I've been documenting the way in which the Department of Hawaiian Homelands treat lands that is held within its responsibility and to manage for the beneficiaries of the Hawaiian Homelands Department. And what I want to say to you is that it is a very poor job that they're doing. That is not just mere opinions. Tonight what I have is I want to share with you pictures that we have, just some now of the pictures that we have that documents the horrendous conditions and the activities of illegal dumping and the storage of chemicals and all of those types of things on Hawaiian lands. And imagine, it's not the wise use of this land that is the problem. The problem is the agency leases to individual companies, mechanics, shipping, construction companies, mechanical repair shops, body shops, and all. And what do they do with their waste? A great many of them will actually dump it and bury it in place on Hawaiian lands. So when the next tenant comes or people need to clean it up and there's a spill of what sort, instead the Hawaiian Homelands has to pay it. Now there are some real issues there, and the issues are land agents who are supposed to be watching what is taking place on this land. Now, in the backdrop here, you see right now there's a picture of calcium hydroxide. Imagine 13 tons of calcium hydroxide was dumped and placed illegally on Hawaiian lands. To date, the Attorney General, the State Health Department, no other agency has taken legal action against the individuals or companies that is responsible for this. The party that was responsible for this, the original owner of this material, the calcium hydroxide, you see here in the picture, and we will show many of them, is Road and Highway Builders. They brought the material from the Big Island while working on the Saddle Road. This is information provided by some of the tenants who acknowledge and admit that they were responsible for placing it there. Now, this was a Hawaiian lease. Now, if you look, cement, asphalt, asbestos-containing materials, all of those materials will create a horrendous cost to clean up. But yet, the Hawaiian Homelands Department actually tolerate this behavior. And to date, again, have not prosecuted a single individual, nor criminally or taken civil action in any of these matters. You see old homes that were destroyed, taken there and buried and dumped. Paints, oils, gasoline, other fuels, military equipment. So the reality is, with the Hawaiian Homelands, we could get better tenants, pay a premium price for rent and lease fee, and then in turn, take that money and invest it wisely to create an infrastructure, fixing the roads, fixing the utilities, that would then enable the Hawaiian community, the beneficiaries, to benefit from that wise use. Instead, the agency, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, here's an example here. An old construction site dismantles some building, and where does the material end up? This is in Kalaeloa. Again, and they're interspersed here. These pictures are, this is the actual cleanup. The cleanup was conducted by the individuals who, in fact, dumped it there and spilled on the ground. Now, one interesting thing, this material is considered hazardous if it is wet. And in some of these pictures, you will see the individuals that are working to clean this up is actually spraying water. Now, just the other day, 2 days ago, I contacted the State Health Department and Solid and Hazardous Waste and inquired, what is the status of this violation, of this illegal dumping of this calcium hydroxide? The answer was, we don't know, we haven't taken any issues, and more than likely we won't take any issues. Now, the question is, why did they not take action? Is it because the company, Road and Highway Builders, is politically connected? Just a question we ask. Is it that Road and Highway Builders is sufficiently in power, in tune, or connected politically that they don't have to abide by the law, and when they do get caught or their agents get caught, what do we do? The Department of Hawaiian Homelands absolutely does nothing. Now, we filed a complaint with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands on this particular matter, the illegal dumping of the calcium hydroxide. To date, not a single action taken that we've been informed, and it has been more than 1 year. So when it has to come to the cleaning up of this material and the condition of the soil, it presents a problem. Now, at the same property, this material sat there for more than a year. Other issues that play in the background on this was that part of this land was being used without adequately compensating the Hawaiian Homelands Department for rent or for lease. And in this situation, you can see right now, here's a gentleman spraying water, while again, you're not to get it wet. But the State Health Department and the Hawaiian Homelands tolerated this behavior and then allowed the dumper to transport it and have it placed at PVT landfill. Now, and also at the Waimanalo Gulch landfill. This were the clearance that they received. We don't know exactly where it went because we didn't get the full information of the background. But again, what does this say about the management and the caring of the land by the Hawaiian Homelands? The process should be that when you find someone dumping of this magnitude, of this behavior, then what you should do is evict them, charge them, fine them, and then clean it up at their expense. To date, the bulk of that material still lie in place at Kalaeloa. This is where this is located at Barbers Point. How do we get around this? What do we need to do? The governor, Governor Ige at this time, the time of this occurring, was Governor Neil Abercrombie. And I must tell you that it was his administration did very little to protect the land, very little. The Department of Land and Natural Resources did very little. And the Health Department did very little. Now, these gentlemen are putting this plastic up to transport it, and will transport it over the roads, exposing the public. Here's a contraption that was set up on the same property, adjoining that property, a pot that was devised to burn waste oil. So in other words, when people would generate waste oil, they would put it in here and set it afire. Pollution. All of this was tolerated on state land, Hawaiian Homelands. So the health department did come and respond to that. This is one of the land agents, as we see here, who come to look at it and pretended or stated that he did not know that what this material was, or that it was actually being illegally dumped, when in fact it is his responsibility. The individual that was responsible for dumping that, a large portion of it, was not up to date with his payment and rent and lease. So how does this happen on Hawaiian Homelands? The director failed to respond to this. The state agents failed to respond to this. And to date, we still believe that there should be some kind of prosecution and compensation and the testing of the soil. The State Health Department, Solid and Hazardous Waste, states that they will in fact be looking at this and then giving some decision. But there are many other people who have violated the law in small ways and have been in prison, incarcerated. But with the bigger companies, nothing has happened. And we take that entire Kalaeloa area could be used, if used properly, could generate good revenue for the Hawaiian community. They would benefit. But instead, what is actually happening is that it's an abuse of power, abuse of authority, neglect on the part of the Department of Hawaiian Homeland, its employees, its land agents, and the state government total, because they must complement one another. The health department must regulate and enforce. When there are violations, they should not partner up to shelter these dumpers or people who take advantage of the land and neglect it. This material sat again for more than a year and a half to 2 years on state land, not properly disposed of, caustic, and can be hazardous in changing the pH in the water, in the soils. So if you were to come in and do agriculture or some type of crops or using it for a nursery, you would have to clean it up, a tremendous expense. So it would prohibit the actual use of these, solely because the state agencies that are responsible for managing this fail to enforce and regulate these individuals. Now, there are some things here. This wood and chips, treated lumber should never be disposed of in this fashion because it has chemicals, insecticides, and to prevent termites and retard mold. We allow that. Here's a paint, storage, chemicals stored on state land, same area. Hawaiian Homelands to date has taken no action. Now, if someone wishes to lease this or rent it when it is cleaned up, there should be a tremendous cost. Probably so much though, so that there will not be a recognition of profit. It wouldn't be beneficial to the state agencies. This building was used and this property was used by the same individual and was not paying any rent or any lease. Upon exposing this on TV, immediately this individual started to move this material out to conceal that he was actually using it illegally. Again, does it benefit the Hawaiians? Hawaiian lands in Hawaiian hands? The Hawaiian Homelands is doing poorly performing. You see the chemicals. This is a soil. There were also, we found asbestos containing materials. Asbestos is a very dangerous substance. And mesothelioma, many of you know that of that. And asbestos lying around, just being placed there and illegally dumped. When we look at the total picture of the Kalaeloa, if we could quantify the amount of illegal dumping that have taken place on the Hawaiian homelands in that area, it could be considered a toxic dump site because of the characteristics of many of these materials that were dumped, that were left in place, illegally dumped. And tires, hundreds, if not thousands of tires placed on this land and buried. Now, to dispose of these tires and other materials, it's going to have a tremendous cost to hire someone. So all of this is taken out of the operating budget because they must come into compliance to bring it up to par environmentally and clean it. That money, again, could be used in building infrastructure, subsidizing some of the Hawaiian businesses, or any of the good positive things. But instead, we have scenes such as this repeating themselves over and over and over throughout the lands of Hawaiian homelands. Now, what's the big deal? The big deal is land that is contaminated generally limits the use. The common contamination dictates the use. Now, we don't know, because many of these people that dumped there some of them were individual trucking companies. So this is how the game would work. A small trucking company or a large one would have materials at a construction site that contains lead paint, asbestos, oils, insecticides or chemicals, and they would in turn be paid to transport that, if it was not toxic or hazardous, to transport it to the proper location or to the landfill that it would be destined. So they are paid, and they charge the individual who generates that, charge them a fee. And that fee then is taken and supposedly pay for the actual tipping fee at the landfill. So what happens is, the practice is, I charge the generator or the homeowner who generated that, or the company who tore down the building with these contaminants, and then in turn I would then be paid to truck it and haul it. But if I have a land area that I can dump it and bury it at no cost, I get to pocket the dumping fee and the transport fee. So you can see the incentive is there. You look at this discolored soil, paints, oils, tires. This is Hawaiian Homelands. Now, imagine going in there and building a building for small business, and then some of your workers become sickened. You wouldn't know where to start, because you don't know the history of the contaminants that were buried there, or that were illegally or unlawfully placed there. But these types of things readily repeats themselves over and over and over, all under the watchful eye of the Hawaiian Homelands, an agency that is ripe with corruption, an agency that does not have the interests of the beneficiaries at best. Here we have tires. You look at the discolored soils. Where are these soils originating? Does these soils have contamination? Do they have chlordane, dildrin, aldrin? Did they come from Schofield Barracks, where there's a tremendous amount of insecticide contaminated soils? Did it come from Hickam Air Force Base? Did it come from the Marine Base at Kaneohe or other military sites? What is in these soils? No testing, no sampling, no nothing. And these places were not to be originally, and were not leased to be used as storage or dumping sites. They were leased to the individual to operate on the 30-day permit, revocable. So many of these scenes that you see here really suggests that they have a 10 or 15 or 20 year or an indefinite period of time in their leases. But the nature of these leases is only 30 days and revocable. So how is it that an agency such as the Hawaiian Home Lands would tolerate such violation, egregious behavior on the part of the lessees, and some of them, as I've pointed out, were occupying the land without paying the necessary fees? Here we have a 55-gallon drum of unknown chemicals dumped. If you look in the background, this asphalt or coal plane, a great bit of that came from the Honolulu International Airport, transported and stored by the same company, on behalf of the same company, Road and Highway Builders, as the calcium hydroxide was. And these machines are simply being used to cover up and defraud the Hawaiian beneficiaries on lands that should have been clearing of this material. It should have never been there, and the agency should have been getting the proper revenues for the use of that land. But you know what? They didn't. We have toilets in many places, but here they have no toilets. There are makeshift dumps into the ground. Porta potties non-existent at the time. Here's that coal plane from Honolulu International. You can see other materials here. It was simply a dump fest. And yet, the agency has land agents who basically did nothing and had a great relationship with the tenants. So therefore, it became a problem of enforcement. It became a problem of making sure that the interests of the beneficiaries were not served. They failed to do that. We filed a number of complaints with this agency, the Hawaiian Homelands. We have obtained many of the documents, and we found many car repairs where oil just dumped into the gutters on the streets, broken glass. All of this translates into costs, a terrible cost for the beneficiary in the long run. It will possibly render the land useless or limit it to what types of use because of the contaminants in the soil, and remediating those soils would be expensive, or transporting and digging them up and transporting them to a site that would be able to receive this. Some of this material in these soils that have been dumped may be high enough in readings and the amount of contaminants in the levels that it be deemed hazardous and toxic and has to be shipped out of state. Imagine that cost. So in this bigger picture with the Hawaiian Homelands, dumping on Hawaiian land seems to be good business for someone. Who that someone is, we don't know. Was it individuals or companies? But something has to change. It must change. We don't see these reports, but if you look at this, here's electronic equipment, tires, gypsum board, and just oil totes, all of that, batteries, lead acid batteries, and all of that, and a great bit of that was buried. And then, to add insult to injury, the Hawaiian Homelands tolerated the dumping of asphalt and cement. And you see, when there is asphalt and cement with paint on it, you must decide or determine, sample it to make sure that it does not contain lead. Well, there's no proof that they did, but it should never be stored there. This is what is generally the general scene, what can be expected on Hawaiian homelands. This scene right here repeats itself on many of the leased properties. They have land agents who's supposed to monitor this, and here's a half-filled barrel that who knows what that chemical is. If you look at the corrosion and their seal, who knows what it is. But the problem here that it's presenting, it could be dangerous. It could be dangerous for the environment. It could be dangerous for human beings that would unsuspectingly come and disturb that soil after this tenant has moved and expose themselves to materials that causes illnesses, and we would never know what hit them. So in the long run, imagine getting more land, and imagine the abusive management of it or the neglect of it and the problems that it will present. It will present a problem that is unmanageable, a problem that could have been avoided, and a problem that is overlooked or pushed aside by the state agency called the Hawaiian Homelands, or the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. It is a ruse, in my opinion. It is an agency that is set up to defraud the Hawaiian people. That is not an opinion, but when you are paid, and it is your expertise, as you boast, that you can manage the interests of the people and have scenes like this repeating itself over and over and over, then you're not serving the best interests of the beneficiaries. You're not serving the best interests of the environment. You're not serving the best interests of other taxpayers. You're not serving the best interests of anything other than the selfish issue and benefit to private companies and yourselves who have a comfortable, cushioned job. It has to stop. Fuel. Now, when you see a can that say VP Racing Fuel, we wouldn't want to draw the conclusion that that's what that is, because the can may say one thing, but it may contain acetones, oils, and gasoline, and all kinds of horrible caustic acids or what have you. Here are 5-gallon drum buckets of oil. We see this, but we can't assume that it's oil. So the Hawaiian Home Lands, the State Health Department of Solid and Hazardous Waste, and the HERE office, Hazardous Environmental Emergency Response, the Clean Water Branch within the State Health Department, the DLNR, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands must step up to the plate and divest themselves of this behavior of allowing this to continue while proclaiming they've successfully in managing the resources and the land at the benefit of the people, of the Hawaiian people. I only share this with you because there is a different story being presented in the meetings, in the board meetings, and then what's being presented in the paper when they have the opportunity. But we want to show you the naked truth. That's our statement for tonight. But we will be back and providing you with more examples. Thank you. This is Carroll Cox, and please join me next week.